Hi, everyone, and welcome to Gestalt Language Processors and Augmentative and Alternative Communication. My name is Laura Hayes, and I'm going to be taking you through this self-paced one-hour course and overview on GLPs and AAC. A little bit about me. I have over 15 years of AAC experience in both school and medical settings. I am a member of ASHA, and I do receive a speaking honorarium for this presentation and commission for the full GLP and AAC course that I will mention at the end of the presentation. The three objectives that I hope you take away is being able to define at least three characteristics of Gestalt language development, particularly for someone who has complex communication needs. Be able to identify three considerations in assessment and support planning for Gestalt language processors. And lastly, be able to provide at least three considerations for customizing AAC systems for GLPs. So our roadmap for today, we're going to talk about a brief overview of analytic language development and Gestalt language development. We'll talk about identifying an assessment for GLPs with complex communication needs. We'll talk about supports for GLPs with AAC and just where to get started. Treatment and consideration for devices and device management, and then a brief summary and some more resources to help you along your journey. So let's get started. You may have heard the term Gestalt language development, Gestalt language processing, particularly in recent years because it is a hot topic in the world of speech-language pathology. But it doesn't mean it has only been around a few years. It actually dates back to the 1970s, all the way back to Barry Prezant, and how in coining and defining and learning how individuals might develop language differently. So many of us SLPs, and many parents that are walking into a pediatrician's office and seeing a language development sign on the wall are going to learn about language over here on the left. Language begins with single words. Sounds that turn into single words, then turn into two-word combinations, that then turn into three-word combinations, and sentences and grammar and so forth. In the beginning, language is focused on referential and semantic relationships. These are often called word babies. And when we use the language and the words that appear, they're very often generalized to other activities and events quickly. However, there's another way that individuals develop language, and that is called Gestalt language development. In this type of language development, language is beginning with chunks or gestalts. Gestalt actually means unified whole that can't be broken. These individuals are often labeled as late talkers. Their language is characterized by both immediate and delayed echolalia. Their focus is on intonation and the sound stream. Sometimes it's even called the soundtrack. I think it can be really helpful when we're thinking about this is that it's the soundtrack. It's not the focus on the words themselves, but it's the melody and the soundtrack that they hear when those words are being said. Their language often comes from their environment. So movies, shows, iPad games, YouTube videos. And the key here is that it's tied to meaningful events, episodes, if you will. Their chunked language, their gestalts, are relatively, if not impossibly, inflexible in early language development. Here's some examples. An analytic language processor in early stages might say things like dog, mama, all done. A Gestalt language processor might say things like peekaboo, I see you, I get a bit of go, and all done. If you just look at this slide, you might think that a Gestalt language processor has a ton of language, right? Peekaboo, I see you is a very long utterance. We also can see jargon that then has little pieces of words we may or may not understand. And then I like to include all done because it's just a really good example of how we don't know by one word or one phrase if someone is an analytic language processor or a Gestalt language processor. We're not able to define it in such a small little example. We really need to look at multiple language samples and multiple experiences with that child to determine what type of language processor they might be. When we further dive into Gestalt language development, we can really look at the work of Marge Blanc and then what we would call the natural language acquisition framework. This is a framework that she created based off of years of experience with Gestalt language processors. And it's a framework that looks at stages of language development. There are 6 total stages. And the way that the stages work is looking at everything from Gestalt and early Gestalt language development through to self-generated grammar. So up to stage 6. For the purposes of this introduction, we'll just talk about the first 4. The first stage of Gestalt language development is gestalts. As I mentioned, these are defined as intonationally and episodically defined units or chunks. They are whole. They are not broken. They can be as short as a single sound or word, or as long as an entire song, book, or I've even had a parent describe that her child's gestalt was an entire passage of the Bible. They can be very long and lengthy. Some other examples. Ready, set, go. Let's play. Whoa. When you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. Bonus points if you know that that's from Daniel Tiger. So that's stage 1. In stage 2, we're moving forward and our gestalts are becoming a little bit more flexible in the sense that we are mitigating them. Mitigated gestalts is another way of saying mix and matching our gestalts because they're becoming more flexible in nature. So some examples from the previous stage, we had ready, set, go, and we had let's play. So in this stage, it might be mixing and matching those 2 gestalts. So ready, set, play, or let's go. Another key point here just to remember is that it could just be a partial gestalt from a whole previously. So our Daniel Tiger gestalt of when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4 could just be a shortened version of that to count to 4. After stage 2, we move into stage 3, which are single words and 2-word combinations. This consists of nouns and adjectives, and noun combinations. So this will feel like we're stepping back because the language is shortened. But what's actually happening is that a Gestalt language processor is freeing those words from previous gestalts. So they're becoming, by nature, more flexible in the sense that they have figured out that those words can be freed. So in this one, it might be words like car, car blue, car truck. Again, word order doesn't matter. But you'll notice a key thing. We have no verbs in this stage. This is where referential language begins for our Gestalt language processors. Stage 4 is then marked by self-generated grammar, the beginning of self-generated phrases and sentences. Things like go car, car went, I play car. This stage is often marked by poor grammar. It's a key indicator that they're moving into stage 4. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But why do I tell you all of this? What's the importance of this? There's a few key things that we need to talk about. The first is that Gestalt language development is a natural process of learning language. I think a lot of people think it's a diagnosis. It's not. Some people think it's a treatment method. It's not. Many individuals go along Gestalt language development and need no intervention. The importance of it, though, is that we need to understand it because the implementation strategies that we use, if someone does get stuck, if someone does need support, they matter in moving to flexible autonomous language. How many times have you had that kid that you want to support, that kid where you've tried everything, no matter how hard you've tried, they cannot flexibly use language and communication, and they're frustrated, and you're frustrated, and you just don't know how to move them forward? That might be one of the kids that we're talking about today. It also matters because some individuals think that this is in total opposition of trying to give them support. The way I like to describe this is that we're just on 2 different roads. Both roads lead to flexible language. But again, because we're on different roads, we need different strategies and supports to get us there. Something that's going to support an analytic language processor may not support a Gestalt language processor. So we really need to be careful and thoughtful in what we're doing to support them. Another way to look at this that I think is quite helpful is when we look at those word babies, those analytic language processors, they're already using referential language. So they're down here in stage 3. They're using single words and 2-word combinations. Our Gestalt language processors start here in stage 1. So they have 2 full language development stages before they're getting to referential language. If we're only giving them models in stage 3 and referential language, they may not be able to make that jump to get to more flexible self-generated grammar. We may need to give them supports in stage 1 and stage 2. So I want to give you a few examples before we talk about AAC. This is an analytic language processor. This is my daughter, and this is a meal that we're enjoying. And I just want you to watch how she's using language.
Apple juice. Water. Water. Apple juice. Apple juice.
Yes, orange juice.
Orange juice.
Orange juice.
Orange juice.
Orange juice.
That's right. Orange juice.
That's right, orange juice. Yeah, she's probably a speech language pathologist in the making too. That's right. But you can see the language here. A lot of referential language here. She goes on to say French fries and mama and all these wonderful things. But burger, orange juice, apple juice, right? Lots and lots of nouns, lots of referencing. This is an example of a Gestalt language processor.
Looking pretty tired today.
Yep.
Another early wake up.
Yellow bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you ready for the day? Let's go.
She's like, I was ready for.
Okay, so you may not have caught, it was very, very soft spoken, but there's some jargon in there. She repeats back, yep. The video goes on to have her saying my turn, and as she uses her AAC, it's almost a self-generated script that she continues to say as she uses the AAC, but she uses a lot of immediate and delayed echolalia that would be characterized as a Gestalt language processor, and a lot of jargon that we can't quite understand yet. But you can see that it's intonationally defined, and we're going to talk about some more characteristics here in a little bit. So what does assessment look like for GLPs with complex communication needs? The 2 main things I want you to take away from today are that we know that there's going to be some Gestalt language processors who you're able to identify that are using spoken words and spoken echolalia that is immediate and delayed. You're going to more easily be able to identify them based on your language samples. The key here is, do we think they would benefit from AAC? There's another group that are going to be minimally speaking or non-speaking, and you may have a harder time identifying them as a Gestalt language processor based on your language samples. So how do we identify that they are a GLP? This definition by ASHA is just a quick overview of AAC of it itself. So it's a clinical practice that supplements or compensates for impaired speech language production and or comprehension, including spoken and written modes of communication, falling under the bigger umbrella of assistive technology. So I give you that definition because when we think about someone who's using immediate and delayed echolalia, but they're speaking, we may want to consider AAC. We also need to remember that we all use AAC, right? So a Gestalt language processor is going to benefit, just like we all do, from different forms of communication. But would they benefit from a robust speech generating device? Ask yourself these questions. Are they not developing spoken language and more flexible language despite positive strategies that we know support Gestalt language processors? Are they not intelligible or easily understood by familiar or unfamiliar communication partners? Think about that jargon, how often you're seeing it. Are they not able to achieve self-generated language consistently or intermittently? Some adult autistics will say that in new environments or in oversensory or overstimulating environments, they are unable to generate spoken words. And in these situations, AAC is of use. And ultimately, and this is true for Gestalt language processors and analytic language processors, if they're showing signs of frustration or they're not able to repair communication breakdowns, chances are they're a candidate for AAC. Remember that Gestalt language processing is more than just spoken scripts. So we talked about how we might benefit from it, even if we're using intermediate and delayed echolalia that's spoken. But what about someone who's not using spoken echolalia? Even if someone is not using a lot of understood echolalia, I still encourage teams to take a language sample, record the sounds they're making, the vocalizations they're making, any jargon that you hear, because as we do detective work, it may help you understand, once you know context, what that jargon actually was. You may hear a specific intonation pattern, and then you might more easily define, oh, that was Wheels on the Bus, or oh, that was Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or oh, that was a Gestalt from Bluey, and I just didn't know it. It was, oh, biscuits. Context is everything. So still try to take a language sample if you're hearing that. You will take questionnaires, and you will also, well, I'll explain what an unaided communication sample is in a little bit, but you'll take that as well. And that will help you determine, based off their characteristics that you see, if they're a Gestalt language processor. So what does a language sample look like? I've given you a little bit with a video example, but my nephew is a Gestalt language processor and he loves chimes. So I did a recent one where we talked about chimes, and this was his language sample. So chimes, there it goes, ready, set, go, chimes, chimes, something that I didn't understand, broken, chimes. If you're looking at this sample and I was asking you to score it and looking at the different stages of the NLA framework, you may not be sure what to do, but I'm going to tell you that based off of where he falls, he is and still in stage 1. So that's where we would support him. And I'll show you how to support the different stages in a little bit. But we're also going to take an unaided communication sample. And this looks at their gestures, their vocalizations, their facial expressions, their eye gaze, and their proxemics, which is just their body movement in space, so towards or away from an object, activity, or person. This tells us, with these characteristics here, if they might be a Gestalt language processor. So are they using spoken scripts that hold episodic value? Are they using jargon that's not understood but rich in intonation? Do they study and replay media? Are they rewinding and fast forwarding songs on the iPad or on the remote on your Fire Stick? Is their language inflexible? This is a big one for me. Is it even taught language? If they have, let's say, heavy ABA minutes and there's lots of single words, but it's not flexible. They're only using it in one activity, lots of labels, but they cannot move it to flexible grammar on their own. It's robotic, it's repetitive, it's I want snack. chances are they might be a Gestalt language processor because it's so inflexible. There's limited carryover. They could also be musical, drawn to songs and melodies. Again, pulling in on that soundtrack, pulling in on the intonation. You may also see Gestalt cognitive processing signs, just this in general, hold apart thinking, experiences as a whole. I mentioned being stuck in single words, or something called ecopraxia, where they're acting out Gestalts and scripts with their bodies. And really, it comes down to, are they just stuck and having a difficult time with carryover despite positive language models? So these are two AAC users, Lily and Buddy, that you're going to see here next. And I just want you to watch and see how they're communicating.
What, Lily?
Outside.
What about outside?
Outside. Peace.
Outside, please? What do you want to do outside?
Can I eat this outside, please?
Can you eat outside, please? Okay, you know what? We can do that. You have to take your food with you, though.
So Lily's great. She is moving towards more flexible grammar, and she uses Proloco to go. But you can see that she's got some rich intonation here as she communicates with her mom. Her mom does an amazing job of acknowledging what she does say. And you're going to see how her layout is customized for her here in a little bit. Okay. This is Buddy, and he is a LAMP Words for Life user. And again, I just want you to watch and see how he communicates.
By Coachman, of course. Bibbidi, bobbidi, boo. One more. The bus is coming. One more time, ready? But instead of a horse, why a coachman, of course. Bibbidi, bobbidi, boo.
Okay, so you can see, I hope you can see in this example that if I was doing an unaided communication sample, because he is not using spoken echolalia, we can see that he signs more, he uses eye gaze when mom references the bus coming, and he really gets excited when mom is talking in one of his favorite scripts from a movie, Cinderella. And just so much shared joy in this interaction. So this is both going to tell us that he might be a Gestalt language processor. Spoiler alert, he is. And also what we might consider programming down the road in his system to kind of share that point of connection, share that Gestalt with him and help him move towards more flexible grammar. So let's keep going. How do we support GLPs with AAC? Where do we get started? Oh, the potential difficulty here is that AAC systems were designed for the analytic language processor. They are designed with single word systems for the most part, with pictures that represent a single word. Meaning, if I have a cheeseburger, there is a picture of a cheeseburger with the text cheeseburger. If I have the word go, I'm going to have a picture of something that represents go, whether it be an arrow or a stoplight or a frog. This can become problematic because our GLPs don't necessarily think about something in a single word, right? They have a hard time breaking it apart because they're hold apart thinkers at the forefront. So they're episodic thinkers and may not benefit, at least in early stages, from those single word, single icon setups. We also know that AAC systems are built with synthesized speech. This can become problematic because, especially in early Gestalt language development, the sound source matters. So when we think about where the sound source comes from, synthesized speech is not natural in the original sound. So for example, bibbidi bobbidi boo, if that were synthesized speech, it might come out bibbidi bobbidi boo. It's choppy, it's not fluid, and we lose some of that prosody and that intonation when we move to synthesized speech. And lastly, we have our core vocabulary main page up front. When we talked about the NLA framework, core vocabulary came in stage 4. Words like go, verb, tense, all of that, it's coming later. Even pronouns, unless we're hearing them as parts of gestalts, we are not necessarily seeing them broken out into single words. I do want to go over some misconceptions because I just mentioned some problems with how AAC systems are programmed and designed. But I think because of that, people think that we're recommending, when we look at Gestalt language development, we're recommending a phrase-based language system to communicate, and that's going to support them. That is not what we're saying, and that is not enough. We need grammar. We need single words. We also need individualized gestalts in early language stages, as we just discussed. So we need those things. It's not enough to be a phrase-based language system. Some people will also think that supporting a GLP means completely reorganizing a language system. Get rid of the core vocabulary, just delete the home page. We need those words. We need those words in stage 3, stage 4, and beyond. We can't get rid of it. And there's so much programming that goes into it that we do not want to lose that. It's vital, it's key, and we want to be modeling those words as we go. But know that modeling Gestalt or scripts by sequencing out words, sequencing words into phrases and sentences may not be enough. As I mentioned, when we sequence words on a system into phrases and sentences, it's not fluid. It's not holding that whole unit with a level of prosody and intonation that is cohesive. It may not be enough. And we'll talk about how we can modify that to support them if it isn't enough. And then the last one is just that, well, okay, we need to model phrases that we can break down. So let's just have an app. Let's have some universal scripts and phrases that we can use for our GLPs. It's just not quite that simple. We have, in those early stages, it's so individualized and customized that a universal script system or app is just not going to work. So what softwares do support GLPs? A lot of software supports that support our ALPs. Robust language with core and fringe. Vocabulary that supports all language functions. We want them to have requests, comments, asking questions, being able to protest. They need access to the alphabet. They also need access to strategic and efficiency phrases, right? So self-advocacy phrases. We know research supports this. Visual and photo scenes. Lots of software systems have this ability to add visual and photo scenes that might give a more complete picture of an episode or an activity that the GLP, the Gestalt language processor, might resonate with. And then lastly, the ability to link videos and audio. As I mentioned, in early language development for Gestalt language processors, that audio source can be really, really important. So if your AAC system allows for you to link or record audio, you can record that original audio source or video source. So when we are determining the stage, we're going to use language sampling. So you're going to look at what language they're giving you, whether that be through the AAC device, whether that be through spoken or echolalia or spoken utterances. And you're going to look at that along with you're going to look at your language sample and your unaided communication sample, and you're going to determine what stage you feel like the GLP is in. More than 50% of the time. Then what we're going to do here is we want to live in this stage with them. We want to offer supportive strategies in that stage, and then we will see over time that they're going to naturally move into the next stage on their own. And then when they're in that stage, more than 50% of the time, using a variety of different types of language functions, we can start to support them in that stage as well. You'll know this because you're going to take language and unaided communication samples periodically. So in stage 1, we want to offer a variety of gestalts that are mitigable, meaning they can be broken apart. easily reproduced so they can hear them a lot over time. Meaningful. Again, we've talked about the crucial nature of how we need to be individualized in this approach. For example, my nephew, if we talk about snacks, snacks are not his favorite thing. I will get very little initiated language from him when we are having a snack, talking about food at the dinner table. However, his favorite thing are chimes. If we go and we listen to chimes, if we play with chimes, I get so much more initiated language, and then I can use that to acknowledge and offer additional communication and potential gestalts to him. So the key here is to acknowledge all communication that is self-initiated. We really want to try to build off of anything that they tell us and initiate, whether that be, again, on the system with things that we have modeled or programmed in, or what they've spoken. So again, we're going to use a bunch of different variety of types of language. So requests, comments, sharing joy within activities, protesting, self-advocacy, asking questions. I'm giving you some examples here, but again, these are just some generic ones. We can be as specific as we want to, right? We can say, I love chimes, or, oh, they stopped, I don't like it. Asking questions, where'd the chimes go? You'll start to see that they should move into mixing and matching those gestalts, or stage 2. But before you move into stage 2, you want to ask yourself, do they have a variety of gestalts in those different language functions? Are they mitigable? Does the child share joy and have points of connection with the language you're sharing? In stage 2, it's going to be very similar to stage 1. You're just going to start to offer mixed and matched mitigations of the gestalts you're seeing. So you're going to continue to acknowledge all communication that is initiated, and you're going to build upon it. I will say this is the hardest stage for AAC because we are not going to delete any of the gestalts we programmed or customized in the system, but we also have to figure out different ways to mix and match it because it's not meant to be sentence starters or sentence fill-ins. So I'm not just going to have let's and it's time for and on one page, and then have all of these different things at the on the rest of the page. It's not meant to be like sentence starters and sentence completion. We're mixing and matching all types of what gestalts they might use. So if I have ready set, I'm ready set play on a single icon, I might then have an icon below it, or if your system has pop-up pages, which we'll talk about in a bit, you can create a pop-up so that your ready set play then becomes ready set, and then a separate button will become play. It can get really tricky because there's a lot of systems that have motor planning, and we want to keep that motor plan intact. So you have to really look at it with an individual eye and see what their motor abilities look like, what their sequencing abilities look like, and again, without deleting any of their original gestalts. Before we move on, we want to make sure that they have a variety of different types of language functions and mitigated gestalts, that we want to see them naturally pulling out single words and referencing them, and then sharing that joy again. So in that stage 3, this one will feel the most natural within an AAC system because we're beginning to offer single words and 2-word combinations that are referential. So you might have to do a little bit of digging because we're still not on that core home vocabulary page yet. We're going to be in nouns and noun plus nouns. We're going to go to that describing page a lot. Use those adjectives. We really want to stay here as long as possible. This is the point. If they haven't already started exploring the whole system and looking through folders, let them go to town. Give them time to do that. Model going into the folders. Use talk alouds where you're talking through navigating to different folders. And hopefully, and what I have seen is that you're going to start to see them referencing using both their devices or their speech and unspoken communication like eye gaze and gestures. Before moving on, just make sure that you're starting to see those referential combinations and some grammar. So basic sentences. You should start to see some basic sentences here as well. When we move into stage 4, we're starting to get into that grammar. This is where you're going to use their devices. You're going to use the core page. You're going to use there's a link here, and I have it in the references, but the DST and the DSS are supportive in the sense that you can look at what grammar you're seeing in language samples and like work on areas where you don't see them using those types of sentences yet. So I'll link that, but also know you can go to the Communication Development Center website, and it has these resources and links as well. But you're just going to continue to acknowledge all communication and take those language samples. And at this point, you won't have unaided communication sampling because they will be using that self-generated grammar on the device. So you'll be taking language sampling that way. As Kate Flexman said, good AAC is still good AAC. So what does good AAC look like for GLPs? We're not going to focus on the exact right app, or, people ask me all the time, what's the best GLP app? I say whatever features the individual needs. I've had all different kinds of individuals use different apps very successfully as Gestalt language processors. We need to focus on using supportive strategies and connecting and building positive relationships. So what are those strategies? We want to be individually focused. I think I've hit on this a few times. We want to respect the communication they're using and the different modalities, and understand that we need to, in early Gestalt language development, really individualize the Gestalt and tailor it around meaningful experiences for the GLP. It's not enough to give them a set group or a core vocabulary approach, or you necessarily using the device as package. We really need to hone in on what is meaningful for them. We want to acknowledge all communication, even if the message isn't understood. And I think I mentioned this, but just I'll hit it home again. Let them initiate. Wait time is key. The magic happens in the silence. We want to decrease our analytic language processing strategies, specifically reducing our questions. The reason why is because language processing and understanding those words within a question really comes when you can understand the word as a unit. And if you look at the NLA stages, you'll see that when we free words and understand them as a unit, that comes in stage 3 and stage 4. So that's when you're going to start to see them understanding more comprehension questions. If they are able to answer questions prior to that, it's likely rote answered responses that you're going to see. Instead, we want to offer comments and declarative language and potential language around those meaningful experiences. We want to avoid prompting. Again, prompting supports that taught language. Instead, we want to use aided language input and offer modeling around the potential language they could use on the device. And lastly, we want to investigate. We want to be good detectives and be curious about the types of language they might be using, the types of media they might be exploring and learning from. We're not going to take scripts that we hear and see literally, bibbity bobbity boo. We're not going to take that literally, right? We're going to look and see what the deeper meaning might be. I do always mention this in my presentations, but if you hear media or you're curious about where a piece of echolalia might be coming from, but it's media source, meaning you think it's from a TV show or a video, there's 5 different resources that I have found helpful. So this would be a good time to grab a pen and write them down, or use your keyboard to type. So they include Yarn, Y-A-R-N, Plays Phrase Me, Pop Mystic, that's P-O-P-M-Y-S-T-I-C, Subzin, S-U-B-Z-I-N, and QuoDB, which is like quote DB. So it's Q-U-O-D-B. Those are all websites you can use to look up different quotes that you might hear from someone, or partial quotes. I found them very, very helpful. Okay. So we have some general strategies, we have some supports. What does treatment look like in consideration specifically for AAC devices? I've already mentioned language samples are our bread and butter. They're the gold standard. That's how we're going to decide and figure out where they are in Gestalt language development, and where they are is where we are going to be. We're going to take history from communication and communicate from those communication partners. We're going to do those unaided communication samples. And remember that our multimodal communicators can benefit from a lot of different types of technology, just like our ALPs. So we're going to get supportive and creative in the ways that we do that as well. Any system that we're using, we want to select a robust system. We want to maintain the integrity of that system. Don't delete. I'm telling you right now, do not delete or program over that main page. Some scary things. I mean, there is a reason why they put hundreds and thousands of hours of work into those systems. When you program over let on the homepage to let's, it messes with all of the grammar down the road. So I'm telling you, please don't do that. Consider the software organization when deciding on the location of your stage 1 and 2 gestalts, because this is going to look different on each system. I'll give you a couple of examples here in a second, but just know that it's important to know what app or what software organization looks like for your app. Ask your app developer, ask someone that's supporting you, because we're going to look at programming gestalts that we hear in stage 1 and stage 2, where we think they might be semantically related in a system and what we think the meaning might be. So if, for example, if they're saying the Daniel Tiger gestalt about feeling mad, and I think that, well, they use this gestalt when they're upset, I might put it under the feelings page. If that gestalt means that I'm done, I'm ready to go, I might put it somewhere else. If we are going to model and look at using multiple keystrokes and multiple words and try to sequence them for our GLPs, we want to make sure that we're very fluent and not losing that prosody and intonation while we do that. I mentioned not deleting gestalts as they progress to later stages. Just be open and honor creative communication. I've seen many GLPs use other forms of media to communicate, whether it be videos, whiteboards, ecopraxia, maps. I've seen them get down to a single point on like the globe map, like on the axis. Come to find out that that was where they were going to take a family vacation later. So it's not coincidence. Few examples. So Touch Chat with word power is the top one. This is the word power 42, and this is under the groups page. So again, don't program over this homepage, but we might put or use some of the phrases as potential gestalts here under the social folder. We also might go under groups, and they have 3 templated empty folders that you can actually put. And in this example, I put my phrases. I put this user's gestalts here. This is also, they also have photos, videos, and visual scenes here, so stories and scripts as well. Those can all be used around potential GLP pages and scripts. In contrast, LAMP Words for Life, the one that Buddy uses, it's based off of semantic compaction. So it's based off of the idea that we're going to have a metaphoric picture, like the frog and the stoplight. And that's going to mean multiple things, because we want to get the most bang for our buck and have all of our symbols be within 2 to 3 hits to build motor, what we call motor automaticity or motor planning. So over time, we don't have to think about it. It can become automatic. This system was set up so that in the second row, you can see most of these icons are all blank. This allows for us to have some customization on that second row. So that might be where I programmed some of my gestalts. But again, I really want to think about the meaning of the gestalt and where it makes sense the most to have those over time. For another good place that people have put gestalts for LAMP Words for Life is under the mine, which is the second symbol over on that home page. First row, second symbol over. And the other one is the my tag here, which is the second column down, second row over as well. That one has some larger capacity for some customizations. But again, it really just depends on what system you're using. So this, remember Lily, this is how her mom customized hers. I really want you to pay attention to the individual considerations that she thought of for Lily's needs.
So this is Lily's new AAC device layout. It is not terribly different from the layout that she had before. I actually only changed one thing on it, and that was that I added this phrases folder right here on the home screen and also inside every other folder in the same exact spot. And I'll show you what it does. But the whole point was, even though Lily has had AAC for a long time, and even though she can build sentences and she knows how, and we model, and she does a pretty good job, it also takes a lot of work and it's time consuming. And so just because she can do something doesn't mean I don't want it to be easier for her. And given her processing style, where she learns things kind of all at once and not necessarily a button at a time, we wanted to cater to that and help her grow using that. So this phrases folder has a setup similar to her phone layout, which is this list view. And you see I did white and light gray to make it easy to tell the difference between each of these scripts. Each one of these has either something that she already says or something that she says commonly or she builds frequently or something we want to help her build. And then it takes her to the corresponding folder. Now this is just on the home screen that has so many general concepts. So like,
I want to eat veggie, please.
that's an easy way to build a sentence asking for some food.
I feel confused. I want to see Shay.
But inside each folder, so the home screen has general stuff, but then inside each folder, that phrases folder has concepts that just deals with that topic. So you see, this is our people phrases.
Okay, so she goes into more detail. She has a great YouTube channel that you can go to for some more examples, but you can see how she started to customize it. And for her, it made sense to have some general ones that then led into the folder so she could have some folder specific vocabulary that she was kind of mixing and matching and combining. I mentioned earlier that you can use different types of technology, so know that we have light, mid, and high tech. They can all be used together. So really think outside the box. There's this great flip book from Caitlin Kelp's The Communication Classroom on Teachers Pay Teachers with some different gestalts of different language functions here. This is completely free. Some mid-tech systems. If you have talking bricks or other mid-tech systems with voice output, you can put them in natural environment locations and record gestalts. Highly encourage you still to keep them consistent. So like if we were saying it's time to leave near the door, or let's eat near the dinner table or on a dinner mat, I need a break near the calming corner. Just know that we can do that alongside robust language systems as we are supporting their language and the way that they might use language and gestalts within their environment. So we're going to use those language and communication samples to determine where those gestalts might live in our AAC system, or we're going to use the existing motor plans of vocabulary in the system itself while using positive GLP strategies across a variety of language functions. Again, requests, commenting, asking questions, self-advocacy, etc. And then in stage 2, we're going to offer mitigations of the established gestalts we saw in stage 1, not just sentence starters, in the AAC software and organization. Do not remove the original gestalt and continue to use positive language strategies. Pop-ups are a great option for systems that support it. Okay, that brings us almost to the end of our time today. Summary-wise, individuals who are non-speaking can absolutely be Gestalt language processors, and Gestalt language processors who are speaking and using intermediate and delayed echolalia can use AAC. AAC systems were not set up with GLPs in mind, so system customization, particularly if you are seeing likely early stage 1 and stage 2 NLA stages, they may need to be considered for customizations in their systems. If you're not sure where to start, just focus on positive GLP support strategies. It's a really great place to start for your GLPs. And just know too, if you use those supportive strategies for an analytic language processor, you're not going to hurt. That's not going to hurt either. If you're looking at device features that you want to consider or include, think about robust language at the get-go, audio and video recording, or because some systems don't have video recording, just look for audio recording. Using dynamic voice or prosody features, these are becoming more and more prevalent. Smileys, sound effects, vocal smileys, and I think you even heard it in one of the examples from Lily where it just has increased intonation. So there's lots of great fun intonation things that we can start to play with in systems, and I'm very hopeful that there will be more in years to come. If this is not enough, and it likely isn't, because there's no way to talk, just like there's no way to talk about analytic language development in an hour. We took years and years of it as courses and coursework in our programs as speech language pathologists. So 1 hour is just not enough to talk about GLP, let alone GLP and AAC. So I highly encourage you to continue on your journey and continue to look for resources and supports. A few different podcasts that I think can be helpful: Talking with Tech, Innovative AAC Solutions, and the one about AAC and GLP. That one is actually one that I did with Speech Side Up, Vanita, and there's some great specific examples that we talk about. Podcasts are great for informal learning. Some other presentations, free presentations. Everything that I'm sharing here is free, with the exception of the Meaningful Speech course. But the presentations from AAC in the cloud, there's a 1 hour, the knowns and unknowns of GLP, and a 2 hour, which is free if you go to YouTube. Again, I'll include these in the handouts, and hopefully the links stay live for you. And then there's a live Q&A on YouTube that might be helpful for you. If you want more, you can absolutely still go to Meaningful Speech. We have a full AAC for Gestalt Language Processors course that includes bonus modules for many of the mass-marketed AAC apps and softwares. Just know that I did co-author that, and there's some other really great AAC gurus who contributed to the bonus modules. So you can learn more there. It's over 13 hours of additional education. The Communication Development Center is another amazing website where you can find additional information, as well as information on learning more about AAC. And then some of my favorite resources recently are just the community groups. So there's an AAC and Gestalt Language Processing Facebook group, a Supporting Complex and Creative Communicating GLPs Facebook group. It's kind of a mouthful. And then the NLA group itself. Those are all Facebook groups. If you're also into microlearning, you may be excited to learn and follow some of these wonderful people. So specific to AAC and GLP, myself, Emily Diaz, Inspire Connections Therapy, so Lauren Greenleaf and Amy Z, the SLP, are some great follows with ideas and support strategies. Gestalt Language Processing in general, Meaningful Speech, Marge Blanc, Boho Speechy, Katya's great, Jess, the SLP, Playtime with Tor. She also has YouTube videos that are so great for those of your GLPs who might be interested in music. Nicole Casey with Speech Connection, Speech Pathology, and Caitlin Kelps with the Communication Classroom. And then AAC users and their families. So their voices are so impactful because they are still one of those pillars of speech that we need to look at. The AAC users' client values and their family values need to be at the forefront of how we're looking forward, how we're supporting our GLPs. Yes, more research is absolutely needed in this field. We know it is hard enough to find AAC research, let alone AAC research and now Gestalt language processing. I am so hopeful that it is coming. It's on the horizon. But no, there are two other pillars, one being clinical values and clinical understanding within your session, as well as our client values. So clinical experience, there it is. Clinical experience and client values. So the client values includes some of the families input. And so these are some really great follows. So Nigh Functioning Autism, Just Keep Stimming, A Friend for Lilybug. If you really liked Lily today, you will love. They share some really great things. Siblings on the Spectrum, that includes Buddy from today, and Motherhood Phasing are just some. This is not an all-inclusive list. There's many, many more, and lots of people that are on their own journey and just teaching us, be humble, like learn as you go, and just continue to listen to those voices. Here are some of our references for today. And I would just really encourage you, when you're looking at this, think about going to all of the resources that I shared. And if you still have questions, you are welcome to email me. I can be reached at aacinnovations01@gmail.com. I also have a lot of free resources at my website, which is www.tinyurl.com/AAC Innovations. And you can also follow me on social media at AAC_innovations. I try to share a lot of micro learning and examples as I go. So I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation. I hope that it started you out on your journey or answered a few questions that you might have. And you are welcome to email me, or I would encourage you to continue to grow and learn about Gestalt language development, because for me, when I started learning about this, I kept thinking about those AAC users that I was so frustrated because I felt like I did everything I could, and we used all of the language strategies that I knew about. I used core vocabulary. I utilized aided language input. I utilized least to most prompting, and it just felt like nothing was working for them. I was using all the tools in my toolbox, and they were just stuck. And so I don't want you to be stuck. I want you to feel like you have more tools in your toolbox. And so I hope today has given you that. I hope that you have additional successes and you continue on your journey and you can help the AAC users you support. Have a great day.